I'm standing in front of a stranger's house, looking at my late husband's wedding ring in a display case at an estate sale. The same ring I kept in a velvet box on my dresser for 15 years after he died. The same ring my son knew meant everything to me. The ring that represented 42 years of marriage, of love, of a life we built together. It has a price tag on it. $15. $15 for a lifetime of love. $15 for the most precious thing I owned. $15 because my son Michael took it from my apartment while I was at the grocery store and sold it in a garage sale to get quick cash for whatever he needed that week. The ring isn't the only thing here. I see my husband's watch, the one he wore every single day of our marriage. My wedding album, pages yellowed with age but filled with the happiest day of my life. Photo frames with pictures of Michael as a baby, as a child, growing up. My mother's jewelry box, passed down through 3 generations, all of it. Everything I had left after I sold my house to pay my son's debts. Everything I managed to save, to keep, to hold on to when I lost everything else. He took it all and sold it. Sold my entire life for $200. I sold my house to pay his debts. The house where I raised him. The house I shared with his father. The house that held every memory of my family. I gave up everything to save him. And he sold my memories for pocket change. Let me tell you how I got here. How a mother who gave everything ended up buying back her own wedding ring from a stranger. I had Michael when I was 25, his father, James, and I had been married for 3 years at that point. We were so happy, young and in love and full of dreams. James worked as an electrician, good steady work that paid the bills. I worked part-time at the library, a job I loved, surrounded by books and quiet and people who appreciated knowledge. We had a small house in a decent neighborhood. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, but it was ours. We'd saved 4 years for that down payment. Painted every room ourselves. Built the deck in the backyard together. Planted a garden. It was our dream home. Our forever home. The place where we'd raise our family and grow old together. Michael was our miracle baby. We'd been trying for 2 years to get pregnant. I'd started to think maybe it wasn't meant to be. But then it happened. When I told James, he cried. Actually cried tears of joy. He was so happy, so excited to be a father. Michael was a good baby. Easy, happy, healthy. James was an amazing father from day one. He'd come home from work, covered in dust and dirt, and go straight to Michael. Hold him, play with him, change diapers without complaint. He was so gentle, so loving. We were a happy family. Really, genuinely happy. When Michael was 8 years old, everything changed in a single moment. James had an accident at work. He was up on a ladder, doing electrical work on a construction site. The ladder slipped. He fell 20 feet onto concrete. Hit his head. They told me he died instantly, that he didn't suffer. Like that was supposed to make it better. Like instant death was somehow kinder than getting to say goodbye. I was 33 years old and suddenly a widow with a young child to raise alone. The first year after James died was just survival. Getting through each day without falling apart. Working full-time at the library now because I needed the income and the health insurance. Coming home exhausted to take care of Michael. Trying to be both mother and father. Trying to fill a hole that could never be filled. Trying to keep the house, pay the mortgage, maintain some sense of normalcy for a boy who'd lost his father. Michael took James's death hard. They'd been so close. After James died, Michael changed. Became angry. Started acting out at school. Getting into fights. Talking back to teachers. I tried everything. Therapy, which we could barely afford. Extra attention at home. Discipline. Understanding. Nothing seemed to help. Nothing reached him through his grief and anger. By the time he reached high school, Michael was getting into serious trouble. Skipping classes, hanging around with kids I didn't approve of. Kids who were clearly bad influences. Coming home late, sometimes not coming home at all. When I'd confront him, we'd fight. Terrible fights where he'd scream that I wasn't his dad, that I couldn't tell him what to do, that it was my fault Dad wasn't here anymore because I'd made him work so hard. Words designed to wound, and they did. Every single time. I kept hoping it was a phase, that he'd grow out of it, that once he matured, once the worst of his grief passed, he'd come back to being the sweet boy I remembered. The boy who'd loved his father so much, the boy who used to help me in the garden and read books with me and laugh at silly jokes. But he didn't grow out of it, he got worse. After high school, Michael couldn't keep a job. He'd get hired somewhere, work for a few weeks or maybe a couple months, then get fired. Always had an excuse. The boss was unfair. The work was beneath him. His coworkers were jerks. His schedule was too demanding. It was never his fault, never his responsibility, always someone else's problem. He lived at home through all of this. Said he was saving money to get his own place. But he wasn't saving. He'd go out constantly, buy things he didn't need, new phones, expensive shoes, going out with friends to bars and restaurants. Then when he ran short on money, he'd ask me for some. At first, I'd say no. Try to teach him responsibility. Try to make him understand that money doesn't grow on trees, that he needed to budget, to prioritize, to think about his future. But he'd get upset, angry. Sometimes he'd yell. Sometimes he'd give me the silent treatment for days. Sometimes he'd guilt trip me. Say things like, if Dad were still alive, he'd help. If Dad were here, he'd understand. You're not Dad, Mom. You'll never be Dad. That guilt would eat at me until I gave in. Until I handed over the money he wanted. Just this once, he'd say, just to get by, I promise I'll pay you back. He never paid me back. Not once. Not a single dollar. By the time Michael was 25, I'd given him thousands of dollars. Money I didn't really have. Money I should have been saving for my retirement, for emergencies, for the inevitable repairs the house would need. But I kept giving it to him because he was my son. Because I kept thinking if I just helped him a little more, he'd finally get on his feet, finally become responsible, finally become the man his father would have been proud of. Then he moved out, got an apartment with a friend. I was relieved. Maybe living on his own would force him to grow up, to be responsible, to learn how to manage money and take care of himself. It didn't. 6 months later, he showed up at my door at 11 o'clock at night. His friend had kicked him out. Michael had been spending all his rent money on other things, going out, buying stuff, and couldn't pay his share. Could he stay with me for a little while? Just until he got back on his feet. Just until he saved up enough for his own place. I said yes. What else could I say? He was my son. I couldn't let him be homeless. He moved back into his old room. Said it would be temporary. Just a month or two. Just until he got situated. He stayed for 3 years. 3 years of him living in my house, eating my food, using my utilities, contributing nothing. He'd work part-time jobs, barely enough hours to call it employment. When I'd ask him to help with bills, to contribute to the household, he'd say he was broke. When I'd suggest he get a better job, work more hours, he'd say he was looking. He'd say the job market was tough. He'd say he was trying. But he wasn't broke. He had money for going out with friends every weekend. Money for new clothes. Money for video games and entertainment subscriptions and whatever else he wanted. He just didn't have money for helping his mother who was housing him for free. I was in my 50s by then. My body was starting to hurt from years of physical work around the house, of maintaining everything alone since James died. I should have been thinking about retirement, about slowing down, about taking care of myself. Instead, I was supporting a grown man who refused to grow up. Then things got worse. Much worse. Michael started borrowing money from other people, friends, acquaintances, coworkers from his various short-term jobs. He'd tell them he needed it for emergencies. Car repairs that didn't exist. Medical bills that were fabricated. Family emergencies that were lies. He was convincing when he wanted to be. Charming. He'd gotten that from his father. James had been charming too, but James had used his charm for good. Michael used his to manipulate. People started calling me, showing up at my house, looking for Michael, looking for their money back. He'd hide in his room and make me deal with them, make me apologize for him, make me explain that I didn't know where he was or when he'd be back. Sometimes, because I couldn't stand the embarrassment, because I couldn't stand these angry people on my doorstep, I'd pay them back myself. Money I didn't have, going to cover debts my son had created. Michael, you can't keep doing this. I'd tell him after yet another person had come looking for money. You have to pay people back. You have to be responsible. I will, Mom. I know. I'm just going through a rough time right now. Things will get better. The rough time lasted years. Years of broken promises. Years of excuses. Years of me enabling behavior I knew was wrong because I didn't know how else to help him. When Michael was 32, he came to me in tears. Real tears streaming down his face. Said he'd made a terrible mistake. Said he'd gotten involved with some people. Bad people. People who weren't patient about getting their money back. He owed them money, a lot of money, $15,000. And they were threatening him. Said if he didn't pay up soon, something bad would happen to him. How did you end up owing $15,000? I asked, my voice shaking with anger and fear. He wouldn't look at me. Couldn't meet my eyes. I made some bets. Some bad bets. I thought I could win. Thought I could make money. But I lost. I kept betting, trying to win it back, and I just lost more. Mom, I'm scared. These aren't good people. They're serious. I need help. Bad bets. My son had been taking money he didn't have, placing it on sports or cards or whatever else, trying to make more, and he'd lost it all. Lost money he'd never even had in the first place. I don't have that kind of money, Michael. But you have the house. My blood went cold. What? You could take out a loan against the house, a home equity loan. You've owned it for so long. It's got to be worth something. You could borrow the money. I'd pay you back. I promise. This is serious, Mom. These people don't mess around. Please. The house. The house James and I had bought together. The house where we'd raised Michael. The house where I'd lived for over 30 years. Every room held memories. The kitchen where James had cooked breakfast every Sunday morning. The bedroom where we'd slept side by side for years. The backyard where he'd taught Michael to throw a baseball. The living room where we'd celebrated every Christmas, every birthday, every milestone. You want me to borrow against my house? I don't know what else to do. I'm begging you, Mom. I'm really scared. I've never been this scared. Please. I'll get my life together. I'll get a real job. I'll pay you back. I just need this one chance. Please don't let these people hurt me. I looked at my son, 32 years old, crying like a child, terrified, and despite everything, despite all the years of disappointment and broken promises and lies, he was still my baby, still the little boy who'd lost his father, still the son I'd raised and loved. I couldn't let something bad happen to him, even if it meant risking everything I had. Please, Mom, he sobbed. I know I've messed up. I know I've been a terrible son. But I'm asking you to save my life. That's what this is. These people will hurt me if I don't pay. Please. I took out a home equity loan, $15,000. The bank approved it because the house was paid off, because I had good credit from years of being responsible, of paying my bills on time, of living within my means. They gave me the money. I gave it all to Michael. He promised he'd changed. Promised this was rock bottom, and he'd never let things get this bad again. He got a full-time job within the week. Seemed motivated. Seemed scared enough to finally get his act together. For 3 months, it looked like maybe this time was different. Maybe nearly getting seriously hurt by dangerous people had been the wake-up call he needed. Then he quit the job. Said it was too stressful. Said his boss was demanding too much. Said he needed something less intense. He went back to part-time work. Back to barely scraping by. When I brought up paying me back for the loan, he'd get defensive. Said I was pressuring him. Said I should be supportive, instead of always nagging him about money. I was 60 years old. Suddenly I had a loan payment I could barely afford. A loan I'd taken out to save my son from his own terrible decisions. I was working full-time at the library, and picking up every extra shift I could. My retirement savings were gone. My emergency fund was depleted, and I was struggling to make the monthly payments. I started lying awake at night, doing math in my head. trying to figure out how to make the numbers work, cutting every expense I could, eating less so the grocery bill would be lower, keeping the heat down in winter even though I was cold, putting off every repair the house needed because I couldn't afford to fix anything. Michael lived with me through all of this, ate my food, used my electricity, contributed nothing to the loan payments he'd caused. Then, a year after I'd taken out the loan, Michael came to me again. More debts. Different people this time. Another $20,000. I don't even know how he'd managed to accumulate that much debt in just a year. More bad decisions. More bad bets. More promises that hadn't been kept. I can't, I said immediately. Michael, I don't have it. I'm barely making the payments on the loan I already took out for you. Then sell the house. What? Sell the house? Mom, you could get enough to pay off the equity loan and pay these debts. You could get a small apartment. Something cheaper. You don't need this big house anyway. It's just you here most of the time. This is my home. Your father and I bought this house together. We raised you here. Every memory I have of him is in this house. Mom, I understand, but I'm in trouble. Real trouble. These people are worse than the last ones. If I don't pay them, I don't know what they'll do to me. Please, I need you. What about getting a real job? What about being responsible? What about not making these terrible choices in the first place? I know, you're right, but this has already happened. I can't take it back. I just need to get out of this mess, and then I promise, I swear to you, I'll never ask for anything again. I'll get my life together. I'll make you proud. Just please, help me one more time. One more time. It was always one more time. One more bailout. One more rescue. One more time putting my life on hold, putting my security at risk, to save him from himself. I thought about saying no. Thought about letting him face the consequences of his choices for once. About letting him figure it out on his own. But he was my son, my only child, the only family I had left, and he was scared. Really scared. So I sold the house. I put it on the market. Got a decent price for it. Paid off the equity loan I'd taken out the year before. Paid off Michael's $20,000 in debt. Had enough left over to put a down payment on a small apartment and have a tiny bit left for savings. The day we moved out, I walked through that empty house and cried in every room. Said goodbye to the ghost of James. Said goodbye to memories of Michael as a baby, as a child, as the boy he'd been before grief changed him. Said goodbye to the life I'd built. Said goodbye to the future I'd imagined. Growing old in that house. Having grandchildren visit. Having family gatherings in the backyard. All of it gone. Sold to pay my son's debts. Michael helped me move into the apartment. Seemed genuinely grateful. Kept saying he'd never forget what I'd done. That he'd make it up to me. That he'd spend the rest of his life being the son I deserved. The apartment was tiny. 1 bedroom. Barely any storage. But it was cheap. I could afford it on just my library salary and Social Security. It would have to be enough. I brought only what would fit. Had to leave behind so much. Furniture that wouldn't fit through the narrow doors. Boxes of things I didn't have room for. Decades of accumulated life, packed away or given away or thrown away. But I kept the important things. The irreplaceable things. Photos of James, carefully framed and cherished. Our wedding album, pages yellowed but precious. His ring, the one he'd worn every day of our marriage, kept in a velvet box on my dresser. His watch, the one I'd given him for our 10th anniversary. My mother's jewelry box, ornate and beautiful, passed down from my grandmother to my mother to me. Pictures of Michael as a baby, as a child, growing up, all the physical pieces of my life that mattered, all the things that had value beyond money. I set up my tiny apartment. Created a little shrine to my past on my dresser. James's photo. The wedding album on a shelf. The velvet box with his ring next to his photo. My mother's jewelry box, still containing the few pieces that had been passed down. Photos of Michael everywhere, reminding me of happier times. Michael visited once after I moved in. Looked around the small space. Didn't say much. Seemed uncomfortable. Maybe guilty. He left after less than 30 minutes. Said he'd come back soon. Said we'd spend more time together. He didn't come back. Weeks went by without hearing from him. I'd call, he'd say he was busy. I'd ask when I could see him. He'd say soon. Soon never materialized into an actual visit. I started to realize something that broke my heart all over again. Now that he'd gotten what he needed from me, now that I'd given him everything, including my house, I wasn't useful anymore. I'd served my purpose. I'd bailed him out one last time. And now he was moving on with his life like I didn't exist. I tried not to be bitter. Tried to tell myself he was just busy, that he'd come around, that he'd remember what I'd done and appreciate it eventually. But the calls got less frequent. The excuses got thinner. And the distance between us grew wider. I'd given him everything. The house, the money, my savings, my security, my future, everything. And he'd taken it all without a second thought. Without gratitude. Without even pretending to care about the sacrifice I'd made. Months passed. I saw Michael maybe 3 times. Brief visits where he'd ask if I had any money he could borrow. I'd say no, that I barely had enough to cover my own bills. He'd leave disappointed, like I'd let him down by not having more to give. I was lonely. So incredibly lonely. Living in that tiny apartment with my memories. No family nearby. The few friends I'd had drifted away over the years, tired of hearing about Michael's problems. Tired of watching me enable him. Tired of the drama. It was just me. Me and the photos of people who were gone, or who'd left me behind. But I had my things. My memories. The tangible proof that I'd loved and been loved. That I'd had a family. That my life had meant something beyond being an ATM for my son. Then one day, everything changed again. I came home from the grocery store, struggling with the bags because my hands weren't as strong as they used to be. I unlocked my apartment door, and immediately knew something was wrong. The door had been unlocked when it should have been locked. I always locked it. Always. Habits from years of living alone, of being a single woman, of being careful. I went inside, heart pounding. Nothing seemed disturbed at first. Then I went to my bedroom, and my heart stopped. The photo of James was gone from my dresser. Our wedding album, gone from the shelf. The velvet box with his ring, gone. His watch, gone. My mother's jewelry box, gone. The photo frames with Michael's baby pictures, gone. All of it. Everything that mattered. Everything that couldn't be replaced. Gone. I'd been robbed. Someone had broken into my apartment and stolen everything precious to me. Everything with meaning. Everything with heart. I called the police with shaking hands. Filed a report. Gave descriptions of everything that had been taken. They were kind but not encouraging. Said these things rarely get recovered. Said I should check pawn shops. Keep an eye on online marketplaces. Said they'd investigate, but I shouldn't get my hopes up. I called Michael, crying. Told him what happened. That someone had broken into my apartment. That they'd taken everything. All of James's things. All the photos. Everything. That's terrible, Mom, he said. But his voice sounded strange, flat. Do you have insurance? No, I couldn't afford it. That sucks. Well, let me know if you need anything. I've got to go. He hung up. Didn't offer to come over. Didn't offer to help me feel safe. Didn't offer anything, except a brief condolence. I spent days in shock, walking around my apartment, looking at the empty spaces where my treasures had been, crying at random moments, feeling violated, feeling like I'd lost James all over again. Lost the physical evidence of our life together. Lost the proof that we'd existed. That we'd loved each other. That our marriage had mattered. A week later, I was mindlessly scrolling through my phone, looking at nothing, trying to distract myself from the grief. I saw an ad for a local garage sale. Weekend sale. Lots of great items. Good prices. The photo attached to the ad showed a table covered in items. And there, right in the middle, sitting next to some old books and random household items, was my mother's jewelry box. My heart stopped. I stared at the photos, zoomed in. It was definitely mine. Same ornate carving. Same unique design. Same small dent in the corner from when I'd accidentally dropped it years ago. I clicked through more photos in the ad. James's watch. My wedding album. The photo frames. Not all of my things. Some had probably already been sold. But enough. Enough to know. This wasn't a random burglary. This was targeted. This was someone who knew me. Who knew where I lived. Who knew when I'd be gone. I looked at the address of the garage sale. Found it online. It wasn't far. I drove there immediately, my whole body shaking with a mixture of rage and desperate hope. The sale was in full swing when I arrived. People browsing tables of items spread across a driveway and lawn. And there were my things. Not all of them, but some. James's ring in a small display case, $15. His watch on a table, $25. Our wedding album, spine cracked, pages exposed, $10. My entire life, tagged and priced and sold for pocket change. I went up to the person running the sale. An older man, probably in his 60s, friendly looking. "Excuse me, where did you get these items?" He looked at what I was pointing at. "Oh, those guy came by last week with a box of stuff, said he needed quick cash. Gave him $200 for the lot." $200. My son had sold 42 years of marriage, decades of memories, family heirlooms, for $200. Do you remember what he looked like? Yeah, young guy? Maybe 30s. Dark hair, seemed in a hurry. Michael. It was Michael. My son had come into my apartment, probably while I was at the grocery store, because he knew my schedule, knew when I'd be out. He'd taken everything that mattered to me, and he'd sold it to this stranger for $200. "These are my things," I said, my voice shaking. "They were stolen from me last week." The man looked uncomfortable, sympathetic, but firm. "I'm sorry to hear that. But I bought these fair and square. I paid money for them. If you want them back, you'll have to buy them from me. I can't just give them away." "But they're mine. They were stolen." "I understand, but I didn't steal them. I'm just trying to make back what I paid. If your son stole from you, that's between you and him. I'm just selling what I bought." The logic was sound, even though it killed me. This man had done nothing wrong. He'd bought items from someone who seemed to have the right to sell them. He had no way of knowing they were stolen. That they meant everything to someone. That they were irreplaceable. I looked at the prices. If I wanted everything back, it would cost more than $200. More than I had in my account. I'd have to choose. With shaking hands, I pulled out my wallet. Counted the cash I had, plus what was in my checking account. Not enough for everything. Not even close. I bought back James's ring, paid the $15. That was all I could afford. I had to leave the watch, the album, the photos, the jewelry box, everything else. I drove home with that ring clutched in my hand, went into my apartment, sat on my bed, and I broke. I broke in a way I hadn't since James died. I sobbed, screamed into my pillow, threw things across the room. I'd given my son everything. My house, my savings, my security, my future, everything I had. And he'd repaid me by stealing from me. By taking the only things I had left that mattered. The only things that couldn't be replaced with money. He'd stolen my memories. My connection to James. My mother's legacy. My son's own childhood photos. He'd stolen it all and sold it for $200. For what? For gambling money? For going out with friends? For whatever else he thought he needed. He'd valued my entire life, my entire history, my entire heart at $200. I called him, hands shaking so hard I could barely dial. He answered on the fourth ring. "Mom? Where are my things?" "Michael." Silence. Long, telling silence. "Michael, answer me. Where are my things? I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Not now. Not about this. My things. James's ring. The wedding album. Everything. Where are they?" More silence. Then, quietly, "I needed money, Mom. You stole from me." "I didn't steal. I just borrowed some things to sell. I was going to buy them back before you even noticed. You sold them at a garage sale for $200. You sold my husband's wedding ring, our wedding album, pictures of you as a baby, my mother's jewelry box. How could you?" I was desperate. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice. You chose to steal from your mother instead of getting a job, instead of being a responsible adult, instead of being a decent human being. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. I don't care. I was screaming now, something I'd never done before. Years of frustration and disappointment and hurt pouring out. I don't care about your pressure or your problems or your excuses. I sold my house for you. I gave you everything, and you repaid me by stealing the only things I had left that mattered to me. They're just things, Mom, just stuff, just stuff. To him, my entire life was just stuff, disposable, replaceable, worth $200. Those things weren't yours to take. That was my life, my marriage, my mother's legacy. Your own childhood. I was going to get them back. No, you weren't. You never planned to get them back. You took them because you knew I'd give you everything else, but I'd never willingly give you those, so you stole them. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't think you'd find out so fast. I thought I'd have time to fix it. Fix it. You can't fix this. Some things can't be fixed once they're broken. And you just broke the last bit of trust I had in you. What does that mean? It means I'm done. Done sacrificing. Done enabling. Done being someone you only value for what you can take from me. You want to live your life making terrible decisions. Fine, do it. But do it without me. Mom, you don't mean that. I do. I really do. For the first time in 32 years, I'm putting myself first. I'm done. Michael. I hung up, blocked his number, sat in my empty apartment, surrounded by the absence of my memories, holding the one ring I'd managed to buy back. And I realized something. I'd spent decades putting my son first, putting his needs above mine, his wants above my security, his problems above my peace. I'd given him everything, and he'd taken it all without a second thought, without gratitude, without respect, without even seeing me as a person, just as a resource to exploit. And I was done. For the first time in 3 decades, I was putting myself first. And it felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. The next few weeks were dark, really dark. I'd go to work at the library, come home, and just sit. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep properly. Just sat there thinking about everything I'd lost. The house, the money, my things, my son. All of it gone. I fell into a deep depression. Stopped answering my phone. Stopped checking my email. Stopped doing anything beyond the bare minimum to survive. I'd wake up, go to work like a zombie, come home, and exist. That's all I was doing. Existing. A coworker at the library noticed. Her name was Susan. We weren't close friends, just friendly colleagues, but she'd always been kind. She stopped by my desk one day. Are you okay? You seem, I don't know, different lately. I almost said I was fine. Almost gave her the automatic response. But something broke and the truth came pouring out. Right there in the library, surrounded by books and quiet, I told her everything. About Michael. About the debts. About selling my house. About him stealing my things. About how I'd given him everything and he'd taken it all without a second thought. Susan didn't judge, didn't offer platitudes, just listened. Really listened. And when I was done, she said something that changed everything. You need to do something for yourself, something that reminds you that you're a person, not just a mother, not just someone's resource. You're a whole person with value beyond what you can give to other people. I don't even know who I am beyond being Michael's mother anymore. Then it's time to find out. That conversation stayed with me, echoed in my head for days. Who was I beyond being Michael's mother? Beyond being James's widow? Beyond being the woman who gave and gave and gave until there was nothing left? I didn't have an answer. I'd spent so long being defined by other people, by what I could do for them, that I'd forgotten to be a person in my own right. That night, lying in my small bed in my tiny apartment, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to Susan's words, to the idea that I needed to do something for myself. But what? Then I remembered something. Years ago, before James died, I used to love painting. Watercolors mostly. Nothing fancy. Just a hobby, a way to relax. I'd stopped after James died because there was no time. Michael needed me. Work needed me. The house needed me. There was always something more urgent than my silly little hobby. But now I had time. Now I had nothing but time and emptiness. The next day, I went to a craft store. Used money I probably shouldn't have spent. Bought a basic watercolor set, some paper, a few brushes. Nothing expensive, just enough to try. That evening, I sat at my small kitchen table and painted. My hands were stiff from years of not holding a brush. My first attempts were terrible, childish, embarrassing, but something about moving the brush, watching colors blend, creating something from nothing, it felt good. It felt like breathing after being underwater for years. I kept painting. Every evening after work. Didn't show anyone. Didn't share them. Just painted for myself. Flowers, landscapes, abstract messes that didn't look like anything but felt like emotion on paper. Susan noticed the change in me. You look better. What happened? I started painting again. That's wonderful. Can I see? I almost said no. Almost hid them away. But I showed her a few pieces on my phone. Simple paintings. Nothing special. These are beautiful. You're really talented. They're just, for fun. Have you ever thought about taking a class? The community center offers art classes. I've seen the flyers. I hadn't thought about it, but the idea appealed to me. Being around other people, learning, growing, doing something just because I wanted to, not because someone needed me to. I signed up for a beginner watercolor class at the community center. Once a week, Tuesday evenings. It was cheap enough that I could afford it if I was careful. The first class was terrifying. Walking into a room full of strangers. Feeling old and awkward and out of place. But the teacher, a woman about my age named Patricia, was warm and welcoming. Art isn't about being perfect, she said to the class. It's about expressing yourself. About doing something that feeds your soul instead of just getting through the day. Everyone here is at a different skill level, and that's okay. We're here to learn and grow together. Those words hit me hard. Doing something that feeds your soul. When was the last time I'd done that? When was the last time I'd done anything for the pure joy of it, without obligation or duty, or someone needing something from me? I couldn't remember. The class became the highlight of my week. 2 hours where I wasn't Michael's mother, or James's widow, or someone's employee. I was just me, learning, creating, existing for myself. I started making friends, other women in the class. Most of them around my age. Most of them had similar stories. Kids who'd grown up and moved away. Husbands who'd passed. Lives that had been lived for others and now they were figuring out how to live for themselves. Patricia, the teacher, pulled me aside after class one evening. You've really improved. Your use of color is beautiful. Have you thought about entering the community art show next month? Oh, I couldn't. My work isn't good enough, says who? You're allowed to participate in things even if you're not perfect at them. You're allowed to take up space and be seen. That's part of being alive. Her words echoed Susan's from weeks ago. I'm allowed to take up space. I'm allowed to be seen. I'm allowed to exist beyond what I can give to other people. I entered 2 paintings in the community art show. Simple pieces. A sunset over water. A vase of wildflowers. Nothing revolutionary, but they were mine. The night of the show, I almost didn't go. Almost stayed home. But Susan had heard about it and insisted on coming with me. So I went. The community center was packed. Families, friends, neighbors, all there to support the local artists. My 2 paintings were on the wall with dozens of others. Small pieces in a sea of art. But people stopped to look at them. Left comment cards saying they liked them. One woman came up to me. Are you the artist who did the wildflowers? I nodded, nervous. It's beautiful. It feels peaceful. Like coming home. Thank you for sharing it. I cried in the bathroom after that. Someone had seen something I created and felt something from it. When was the last time I'd made anyone feel anything except obligated or guilty or frustrated? After the art show, things started to shift. I started seeing myself differently. Started thinking maybe Susan and Patricia were right. Maybe I did have value beyond what I could do for other people. Maybe I was allowed to exist for myself. I started taking better care of myself, really taking care of myself for the first time in years. I went to the dentist for the first time in ages, got some needed dental work done, saved up for it slowly. It felt good to invest in myself. I got a haircut at a real salon instead of trimming it myself in the bathroom. The stylist was young and kind. She didn't judge my years of neglect, just fixed it, made me look put together, made me feel a little less invisible. I bought some new clothes. Nothing expensive, just a few things from a thrift store that actually fit, that weren't falling apart. It felt strange spending money on myself, guilty almost, but also good, really good. Susan noticed all these changes. Look at you, you're blooming, I laughed. I'm 64 years old. Little late for blooming. It's never too late. Besides, you're not blooming for anyone else. You're blooming for you. That's the best kind. I joined more activities at the community center. A walking group that met twice a week. A book club that discussed novels I'd always wanted to read but never had time for. Slowly, I built a life that was mine. Separate from Michael. Separate from being James's widow. Just mine. Patricia from art class became a real friend. She was a widow too. Had raised 4 kids alone after her husband died young. Her kids had all moved away and rarely visited. We understood each other in a way others couldn't. Do you still hope they'll call more? I asked her one day while we were painting together. Sometimes, she admitted. But I've learned that I can't base my happiness on whether they remember I exist. I have to build a life that's full without them. And if they show up, great. If they don't, I'm still okay. How long did it take you to get there? Years. And some days I'm not there at all. Some days I'm still angry or hurt or sad. But most days now, I'm okay. I have purpose. I have people. I have things I love doing. That's enough. I wanted that. That peace, that acceptance, that ability to be whole without needing Michael to validate my existence. Months passed. I didn't hear from Michael at all. I'd unblocked his number after a while, thinking maybe he'd call, maybe he'd apologize, maybe he'd realize what he'd done, but the phone never rang. At least not with his name on the screen. I saw updates on his social media occasionally. He was still living his life. Still making questionable choices from what I could tell from the photos. But it wasn't my problem anymore. I'd stepped back, stopped rescuing, stopped enabling, and to my surprise, the world didn't end. I didn't fall apart. I was okay. Better than okay, actually. I was happy, not every day. Some days were still hard. Some days I still felt the ache of everything I'd lost. But most days, I was genuinely happy. I was painting regularly now. Had joined a local art group that met monthly. I'd taken up other hobbies too. Started volunteering at the library on my days off, helping people find books, recommending stories, connecting people with information. It felt meaningful, like I was contributing something beyond money or sacrifice. One day, about a year after I'd cut Michael off, I was at the library reshelving books when my phone rang. Michael's name on the screen. My heart jumped, part fear, part hope, part dread. I stepped outside to answer. Hello, Mom. His voice sounded wrong, shaky, young, scared. Michael, what is it? I need to see you. Can you come meet me? Please, it's important. Every instinct screamed at me to say no, to protect myself, to not fall back into old patterns. But he sounded genuinely distressed. And despite everything, he was still my son. Where are you? He gave me an address, a park not far from where I lived. Please, Mom, I really need you. I drove to the park, found him sitting on a bench. He looked terrible, thin, pale, older than his 33 years. When he saw me, he started crying before I even sat down. Mom, oh God, Mom. He reached for me. I sat beside him, but didn't hug him, didn't reach back. Just waited. I'm so sorry, he sobbed. For everything. For taking your things. For stealing from you. For all of it. I'm so sorry. Why now? Why are you sorry now? Because I lost everything. Everything. I got evicted. Lost my job. My girlfriend left me. I've got nothing, no one. And I realized I did to everyone else what I did to you. I used people, took from them, and now they're all gone. And I'm alone, and I don't know what to do. So he was sorry because he'd finally faced consequences. Because people had finally stopped rescuing him. Not because he'd genuinely understood what he'd done to me, but because he'd finally experienced what it felt like to have nothing. I don't have money to give you, I said clearly. If that's why you're here, it's not. I swear, I needed to see you, to tell you I'm sorry, to ask if there's any way you could forgive me. I looked at my son, really looked at him, saw him not as the baby I'd raised or the little boy who'd lost his father, but as the man he'd become. A man who'd made terrible choices, who'd hurt people, who'd stolen from his own mother, and who was now facing the reality of those choices. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly. Maybe someday. But right now, I'm still angry, still hurt, still processing what you did to me. I understand. I don't deserve your forgiveness. No, you don't. We sat in silence for a few minutes, then he spoke again. Can I ask you something? What? Why did you stop? Why did you finally stop helping me? Because you sold my memories for $200. Because you showed me that I wasn't a person to you. I was just a resource. And I realized if I kept letting you treat me that way, I'd have nothing left. Not even myself. I'm trying to do better now. I got into a program for people with problems like mine. Money problems, impulsive behavior. They're helping me understand why I make these choices. That's good. I'm glad you're getting help. Do you think, maybe, we could try again? Start over? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Did I want Michael in my life? After everything? Part of me did. He was my son. I'd always love him on some level. But could I trust him? Could I let him back in without losing myself again? I need time, I said finally. I need to see that you've really changed. Not just words, actions. Consistent actions over a long period of time. How long? I don't know. As long as it takes. If you're serious about changing, about becoming someone I can trust, then you won't mind waiting. You'll understand that trust has to be earned back. Can I call you sometimes? Just to talk. Once a month. You can call me once a month. We'll talk. We'll see how things go. But Michael, if you ask me for money, if you lie to me, if you do anything that makes me think you're using me again, I'm done. Permanently. Do you understand? I understand. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for giving me another chance. I'm not giving you another chance yet. I'm giving you an opportunity to prove you deserve one. There's a difference. He nodded. Wiped his tears. Looked at me with something I hadn't seen in years. Respect maybe? Or fear of losing me completely. Either way, it was different from the entitled expectation I'd seen for so long. Over the next year, Michael called once a month like I'd said. The calls were short at first, awkward. He'd tell me about his program, about his therapy, about the job he'd gotten. I'd tell him about my painting, my classes, my life. We were strangers getting to know each other. Parents and children often are strangers once the child grows up. We'd just never acknowledged it before. Slowly, very slowly, I started to trust him a little. Started to see genuine change. Not just words but actions. He kept his job. 6 months, then a year. He paid his own rent. Didn't ask me for money. Not once. He started going to meetings for people with problems like his. Started taking responsibility. After 18 months of monthly calls, I agreed to meet him for coffee. Neutral territory. Public place. Limited time. We sat across from each other in a coffee shop and talked. Really talked for the first time and maybe ever. I understand now, he said. What I put you through. How I took advantage. How I used you. I'm working on it in therapy. Understanding why I did that. What was broken in me that made me think that was okay? What have you learned? That I never processed Dad's death properly. That I was angry at the world for taking him. Angry at you for not being him. And I punished you for it. Took from you as revenge for something that wasn't your fault. Made you pay for my grief and anger. It was the most self-aware thing I'd ever heard him say. I also learned that I'm responsible for my choices. That having a hard childhood doesn't excuse bad behavior. That lots of people lose parents and don't turn into people who steal from their mothers. I chose to be that person. And I have to choose to be different now. Are you different? I'm trying every day. Some days are harder than others. But I'm trying. We finished our coffee. Said goodbye. It wasn't warm. It wasn't like it used to be. But it was honest, real, based on who we actually were, instead of who I'd wished he'd be. More time passed. 2 years after I'd cut him off, Michael showed up at my apartment with a box. He'd called first this time. Asked if he could visit. Bring me something. I'd agreed cautiously. What's this? I asked, looking at the box. Open it. Inside was my mother's jewelry box, the one he'd sold, the one I couldn't afford to buy back. How did you get this? I've been looking for 2 years. Tracked down the guy who bought it from the estate sale guy. He'd sold it to someone else. Took forever to find. Cost me every penny I'd saved. But I wanted you to have it back. It's not everything. I couldn't find most of the other stuff. But this, I could get this back. I held the jewelry box, ran my fingers over the familiar carving. It still had the dent in the corner. Still smelled faintly of my mother's perfume somehow. And I started crying. Not because of the box itself, although I was grateful for it, but because of what it represented. Real effort, real sacrifice. Him giving instead of taking. Him understanding that this meant something to me beyond its monetary value. Thank you, I whispered. It's not enough. It'll never be enough to make up for what I did. But I wanted you to know I'm trying. Really trying to be the son you deserved all along. I looked at Michael, at the man who'd hurt me more than I thought possible, who'd stolen from me, who'd used me, but who was now, finally, trying to change, trying to be better. You're getting there, I said. And I meant it. Our relationship today isn't perfect. We're still rebuilding, still learning how to be mother and son in a healthy way. With boundaries, with respect, with both of us mattering. He calls me twice a month now, visits once a month, brings me small things sometimes. Art supplies he knows I need, books he thinks I'd like. Nothing expensive, just thoughtful, just showing he's thinking of me. He still goes to his meetings, still sees his therapist, still works on being better, and I still paint, still have my friends at the community center, still live my life for me first. We had dinner together last week. At my apartment, I cooked. We talked about everything and nothing. At one point, he looked around at my small space, at the paintings on the walls, at my neat, orderly life. I'm proud of you, Mom, he said. For what? For choosing yourself, for not letting me destroy you, for building a life. You're happier now than I've ever seen you. I am happy. I'm sorry it took losing me to find that happiness. I didn't lose you. I lost the version of you that was using me. This version, the one sitting here eating my cooking and having a real conversation. This version I might be able to keep. He smiled, a genuine smile. Not manipulative, not asking for anything. Just real. I'm going to keep trying to be worthy of keeping. Good. I sold my house to pay his debts. He sold my memories at a garage sale. And I had to break completely. Had to lose everything. To finally learn that I mattered to a person. That I deserved to be a person, not just a resource. That love doesn't mean endless sacrifice with no boundaries. We're not where we were. We'll never be where we were. That mother who gave everything no matter what, she's gone. I'm someone different now. Someone who gives from abundance instead of emptiness. Someone who has boundaries. Someone who knows her worth. And Michael is different too. Not because I rescued him one more time, but because I stopped. Because I let him fall. Let him face his choices. Let him figure out who he wanted to be when no one was catching him. It's not the ending I would have written years ago. But it's real. It's honest. It's built on respect instead of obligation. On choice instead of guilt. And it's enough. For both of us. It's funnily enough. She gave her son everything, including her house filled with memories. He took it all and then stole what remained, selling her most precious possessions for pocket change. She had to completely stop, completely cut him off, to teach him that she was a person with value beyond what she could provide. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is letting them fall, letting them face themselves without a safety net. Not every story ends with reconciliation, but when it does, it requires both people to change. The giver must learn boundaries. The taker must learn gratitude. And both must learn that real relationships require mutual respect, not just endless sacrifice. If this story resonated with you, subscribe. Tell me in the comments. Are you the person who gives everything until there's nothing left? Or have you had to cut someone off to save yourself? Share your experience, your struggle, your moment of choosing yourself. Share this with someone who needs it. Maybe someone drowning in one-sided sacrifice, or someone who's taking for granted the people who love them. Like if you believe love requires boundaries, that giving without limits isn't love, it's self-destruction. Turn on notifications for more stories that remind us we're allowed to choose ourselves. Thank you for being here, and remember, you are allowed to stop giving to people who only take you, are allowed to have limits, you are allowed to teach people your value by refusing to be devalued. Until next time.